Dr. Nyenda is the chairperson to the National Media Committee to ISO Technical Committee 283, and is also the Zimbabwe rep to ISO Technical Committee 283, and he's also the Southern and Central Africa Regional Representative to ISO Technical Committee on Occupational Health and Safety. He is also a lead auditor for ISO 45001 and ISO 14001. He has a NEBOSH certificate in hazardous substances and equipment management. He also has an executive certificate in workplace safety and health management. As for his qualifications, Dr. Nyenda has a PhD in mine restoration ecology. He also has a master's in safety, health, and environmental management, and another one in tropical resources ecology, specializing in mine tailings rehabilitation. And he also has a BSc in environmental science. So that's our presenter for the day, Dr. Nyenda. Maranga, I see your hand is up. You can go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Tonde. I just wanted to help the guys who just joined us on catching up with the toolbox talk that we had. It was about workplace violence, which is regarded as any act or threat of physical violence, harassment, intimidation, or other threatening disruptive behavior that occurs at the work site. This can happen physically or verbally. Uh, you can talk about physical assaults, even homicide. It affects employees, clients, customers, and visitors as well. And what comes to my mind from the time I was working in the industry is month end, when the side hustles or the side families come to claim money for upkeep at homes. It normally doesn't end well. So these things are actually quite common and we can take them as normal. But these are issues that actually need to be addressed. In some of the very busy economies, you can actually hear of people jumping off buildings to their death because of psychosocial issues that will not have been addressed. So I'm very happy to be part of this discussion, and I'm also learning a lot in regards to what we should look out for to safeguard our psychosocial health. Thank you. Just a catch up for the new participants. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Ranga, for that.
Maybe we could hear about incidences of workplace violence from what we've come across in our work. I personally have seen those funny mishaps month end. Can we please hear from other people what they've had? Vani, I see your hand is raised as we wait for the doc to come.
Yes, no, thank you, Ranga. I think also with the like the month end, sometimes family gets involved as well. So I think that's just more of a contribution. So family, they tend to get involved obviously for any like month end, like for example, the payment not coming through. So that's one thing. That's all. I just wanted to add on.
Okay, thank you very much for the contribution, Vani. Anyone else? Mr. Mpunga, can you come through?
Okay, thank you for that. I guess the discussion topic we are having is in line with the main theme that Dr. Nyenda is going to present. But look, it's fair to say that at the moment, there's a lot of challenges at global level. COVID-19 has brought in a whole new dimension of challenges, and in many places, the pressures are already on. So when I think of it, there's the fear of the unknown, the lockdowns that have occurred. It means that some households become financially stressed. the burden obviously transfers to those that are going to work. So in some instances, someone is bringing additional stress from home. And then also in those workplaces, there's a lot of pressures because profitability and sustainability for many enterprises is becoming a challenge. So we've got pressures and stresses and complications coming from all different directions. And I think, you know, going forward, it's an area that organizations need to look at strengthening or having interventions to support workers in the workplace. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mpunga. I agree with you. There are lots of stress factors that are coming in. Even if you look at technology, it's trying to replace people in the workplace. The person is stressed all the time, not knowing how long they are going to last. So these are also issues that need to be addressed, that companies need to take into consideration. We're going to try to move back to Charity Tonde and see if we can get through. Thank you, Tonde. Can you come through?
Okay, thank you, Ranga. I'm sure we can start now. Dr. Nyenda, you can go ahead.
Thank you very much, Tonde. Thank you very much, Ranga, for taking over. A very good morning to you, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our session on occupational health and safety management system with a view of looking at the upcoming ISO 45003 of 2021 as a force to manage psychosocial risks at the workplace. My name is Tatenda Nyenda, and that slide shows who I am. And thanks, Tonde, for the CV that you actually gave to people. Just to put everything into perspective, I think it is all coming from the well in sync with the toolbox talk that we have just had. So in terms of statistics, you will find that significant numbers of workers suffer from work-related stress. But if you want to go now business, because you don't want to be just occupational health and safety technical, you will find that that is translating into losses of money to the tune of billions of dollars related to workplace stress. And that is related actually to the absenteeism that can actually result as of workplace stress. Then the statistics, you have various sources of statistics that that will give you quite a number of a diversity of figures in terms of work-related stress and psychosocial risks. But suffice to say, a good number of those, they go unchecked in the various countries, while probably the other side of the equator is on a better standing with respect to that. What is the objective of our interaction today? We want to promote general awareness on the upcoming ISO 45003 standard as a tool for managing psychosocial risks at the workplace within the framework of an OHS management system. So yes, psychosocial risks are there. We've heard from the toolbox meeting issues of workplace violence, bullying, and all those things. We've also heard of things that emanate outside the workplace that can actually also affect people. We heard things which are like the COVID pandemic that we also had. And a lot of people try to manage those psychosocial risks in different ways. Sometimes they do it in silos, sometimes they do it in bits and pieces. They are not methodical in doing it. And while on the other hand, at workplaces, people are busy managing occupational health and safety issues to the tune that they have occupational health and safety policies as required by the laws. For example, the Accident Prevention and Workers' Compensation Scheme, where it is the duty of the employer to have a policy, and we have had in the toolbox meeting that we must also have those policies. Others will follow ISO standards, for example, ISO 45001 of 2018, and they are managing chemical risks, they are managing occupational, they are managing biological risks, they are managing mechanical risks, physical risks. But sometimes we come short of managing psychosocial risks, not because we do not want it, but sometimes we do not know the extent and the depth of their inclusion and their importance in an overall occupational health and safety management system. So this is a session where we are going to be discussing an ancillary standard to ISO 45001 of 2018. That is a guideline to integrating psychosocial risk management at the workplace in the overall occupational health and safety management system. So the discussion is going to be done in the ISO 45001 framework. But what is ISO 45003? I think the objective is self-explanatory. It is actually there to complement ISO 45001 of 2018. And what we have just heard from previous speakers, this is basically in sync with the provisions of our supreme law, which is the Constitution and the labor laws. And I think even the same in several countries where workplace psychological health has actually to be managed. But what is the expected impact of this guideline standard that is tried to look at a confined issue that is often overlooked? It is expected to foster new approaches to occupational health and safety risk management in organizations that want to formally adopt occupational health and safety management systems so that they are not confined to the traditional and conventional risks only. It is intended to increase identification of soft hazards and risks that are traditionally overshadowed. And at the same time, there are a group of people who benefit. For instance, the implementers of ISO 45001 of 2018, as well as the auditors, who sometimes will be obsessed in looking at how chemical risk is managed, how mechanical risks are managed, how physical risks are managed. And they do not come very smart and explicit on the psychosocial risks. Where are we coming from with respect to this standard? Those who are aware of how standards are developed, they are put as a project item that is put as an agenda item. Voting is done whether it is accepted to be an agenda item. A time frame is set. An expert committee is set. Work groups are set. Then mirror committees within member states of ISO are set. So you find this is a project that started in 2018, and it had several meetings in each year, actually in each year physical meetings, and due to the pandemic, you find that meetings in 2020, they increased because they were virtual. Somewhere mid-2021, like in June, it is expected to be published because the final draft international standard has been approved, and there are no any technical comments that are now being taken for now, except for editorial comments. So in June, it is going to be published. It got approval by various countries and member states of ISO, 97% approval, including ourselves, we approved that. So those who are implementing occupational health and safety management systems based on, let's say, ISO 45001 of 2018, it is important for you really to look at this one because it makes it as a normative reference so that you cover that dimension of risk, which is an integral part of your conformity to the ISO 45001 of 2018. One may then wonder who is supposed to be implementing this or what scope is covered by this standards. It covers the psychosocial risks at the workplace within ISO 45001. It is going to enable organizations to prevent work-related injuries and ill health of their workers and other interested parties. I'm happy because other interested parties, those who can affect you, who are affected by you, or who just perceive themselves to be affected by you, should also catered for to actually promote their well-being. And in the earlier discussion, we also heard people talk about these interested parties as like visitors or customers, also potentially affecting you. And those are some of the issues that you find in the psychosocial risk management space. It is basically applicable to all organizations in all sectors for the development and implementation, maintenance, and continual improvement of health workplaces. So anyone, however big or small you are, as long as you can have a stressor mentally at the workplace, you need to have a look at this one. It's coming. Normative references, I think a good number of you know a normative reference is an ancillary document that is referred to by a parent document, and where you must read it in conjunction with it, and the instructions that you get from there, you need to conform to them just like the primary document. So ISO 45001 of 2018 is a normative reference to this standard. So these work hand in hand. Words have no meanings, we give them meanings, or we bestow meanings on words. We know ISO 45001 has a clause 3 that defines terms and words of instructions that you get there. But then for the purposes of this document, the definitions that you get in ISO 45001 for anything that you are going to meet, ladies and gentlemen, they apply to that. But I think it will be crucial for me to just define two terms like psychosocial risk, which is a combination of the likelihood of occurrence of exposure to work-related hazards of a psychosocial nature and the severity of injury and ill health that can be caused by these hazards. Then the well-being at the work, since these are more like the two core issues that are looked at, catered by the standard. Well-being at work refers to the fulfillment of the physical, mental, social, and cognitive needs and expectations of a worker related to their work. So once we will be talking about this, please let these definitions ring in your mind. Because I said this is a standard, a guideline standard that is going to help everybody to manage psychosocial risks within an occupational management system framework based on ISO 45001. These, the two standards, they share the same structure. Never mind the differences in sub clauses and so forth, but they share the same structure, which is basically your understanding of the context, which becomes an important element in the definition of the scope of your psychosocial risk management, where you are seeing that boundary. Then you start to plan for psychosocial risk management. You take leadership at the center stage, and you have workers to participate. Then you start planning for the psycho risk management. You start getting support for the psycho risk management, social risk management. Then you start implementing your plan that you have supported. Then you start also evaluating your performance with respect to managing psychosocial risks at the workplace. Then when the performance evaluation has shown you on your performance dashboard that you are doing it this way, you have these deficiencies, you start acting. And all the clauses that are in the ISO, like your clause 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 are catered for. Once you've done that, you achieve your intended outcome, which is to prevent ill health and injury that comes from the psychosocial hazards that we will discuss later. That is basically a slide that then shows the main clauses of this ISO 45003, other than the model that I showed you, and it's typically similar, is essentially similar to your ISO 45001 of 2018. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm a little bit dashing because I just want to have an overview of everything to ignite appetite among participants, so that they will probably discuss after this, and on their own, again, they will find a way of trying to prepare really to adopt this guideline as they improve their management of health and safety issues. For anyone who wants to manage health and safety issues, whether they are mechanical risks, whether they are chemical risks, biological risks like your COVID, that is your coronavirus that is actually coming in causing COVID, should understand themselves and everything around themselves, internal issues and external issues. It is on that same token that we have in for ISO 45001 in other risks that we are also saying you need to understand internal and external issues. that are relevant to your purpose as an organization that is running, and that can affect your ability to meet the intended outcomes of your psychosocial risk management protocols. And that slide shows some examples of internal and external issues, which can be the complexity of the supply chain, the relationships with interested parties, which can actually affect your psychosocial risk standing at the workplace, the customers, the client requirements for service provision. You will notice a certain client will tell you they need quite a lot. Those who run ISO 9000, you have a clause on customer requirements. Some will require something that is out of this world, but because the customer is the king, you endure the strain and the stress at least to satisfy that. So you work to the bone marrow to achieve that. Economic conditions, we can never overemphasize on this. I think somebody has already talked about some of this. The nature of work contracts. You don't know whether you are going to be permanent. You don't know whether the next season you're actually going to be called. The demography of workers, which alludes to probably your ages, issues of sex, the human characteristics that we can actually talk about. It can actually be something that affects positively and negatively this issue of psychosocial risk management, the wider context of the organization's geographical region. Then internal issues, those that we already know from general business management in our SWOT analysis, matters of organizational governance, level of commitment, and the strategy directions, other management systems that we may be having, which can be incongruent with this, or actually which may be incongruent with this, they may actually be causing a lot of stress. Characteristics of the workforce, the competencies, where you work, the terms and conditions, the availability of resources, whether roles, responsibilities, and accountabilities have been clearly defined and or not. Those are very important in doing this. So once you're understanding your context, sometimes you need to accept that workers are a key interested party when it comes to occupational health and safety issues. But there are also other interested parties, such as the contractors, subcontractors, suppliers, visitors, etc., regulatory authorities, the communities, even the families, who have certain needs and expectations. But particularly, you need to understand that your workers, they need also social interaction and support matches their workers. They need inclusion in risk management. I think those who are aware of ISO 31000, you know, there's a principle for risk that says it is inclusive. They need recognition and reward. So where it is there, it affects psychosocial risks. Where it is also not there, it will also affect that. Personal development and growth is an expectation. Issues of fair treatment, equal opportunities, financial security, anything that provides even decent work and that subscribes to all facets of labor laws or even conventions that we always find. Ladies and gentlemen, this process of psychosocial risks management, as you may notice, we may speak eloquently, we may have all these understanding of the needs and expectations, but we may commit ourselves having ISO 45001 and 45003, even the one for COVID that we had, the ISO 45005. But where there is no leadership and worker participation as enshrined even in the parent clause 5.1 of ISO 45001, it will be a futile exercise. So there are a couple of requirements from ISO 45003 that will define the commandments for leadership and commitment when it comes to imperatives in psychosocial risk management. There is need for top management to demonstrate their commitment by ensuring that they remove barriers of or limitations to worker participation when it comes to occupational health and safety issues, lest it will actually propagate psychosocial risks. Strategic plans to participate also or get consulted in the setting of strategic plans and systems rather than actually imposing them. Reinforcing sustainability of managing psychosocial risks rather than having it as in an event of some sort of window dressing. They must be engaging workers in managing risks, engaging wake-up in areas where they must participate. I think everybody, when you open clause 5.4 of ISO 45001 of 2018, you know workers there is a long list of areas where workers can participate, and that actually is also underlined in this standard. And support and identify and monitor certain roles when it comes to the execution of certain responsibilities when it comes to psychosocial risk management, and at the same time determine and provide the resources that are necessary. But we know in psychosocial risk management, one important thing is to report some of those issues when they are there. Much as we can report that there is noise, much can we report that there is an electrical fault there, much can we report that there is a respiratory threat in the form of dust at the workplace. But sometimes when you report these things, they can come perhaps from a superior, from a manager, from a supervisor, from a person who occupies the northern hemisphere of the organogram. And if you are at the southern pole of it, you are afraid actually to open up. So you need to also get commitment from top management on protection of workers from threats and reprisals as they report such anomalies. And as part of leadership, these psychosocial risks must also be part of the policy. I am not going to talk about it. I think the toolbox meeting gave us something related to making psychosocial risks a policy issue, which must have those commitments. But you need also to then make sure that this policy is consistent with other policies, and you may also look at whether you can have a separate policy or you can actually increase the visibility of psychosocial risks in existing policies. And you need also to communicate these policies. Where you fail to define responsibilities and authorities associated with the roles, even if you want to be methodical in any effort, you are bound to fail. So organizational roles of managing responsibilities, of managing psychosocial risks becomes very, very important. So you need to foster effective management of these psychosocial risks within a workplace by making sure that you acknowledge the importance of different roles, which must work together to achieve that. Human resources, you are key. Line managers, you are key. The workers themselves, you are key. People with different OHS responsibilities are key in managing psychosocial risks. You will notice this because psychosocial risks, they emanate from work organization. They emanate from social factors at the workplace. They emanate from the work environment, the equipment, the methods that we use. They emanate from the general context of organization. So it is a team effort, and responsibilities must be set for that. For primary interventions, for secondary interventions, for tertiary interventions, that we will discuss as we get to clause 6 and 8. And top management should therefore clarify these roles, responsibilities, and authorities, because a responsibility without authority is negativeness. And also that work organization where there is a responsibility and there is no authority is also a hazard, a psychosocial hazard. Imagine you have a lot of job demands, but you do not have control. So people will always ask you who you are when you want to actually exercise something that is on your job description. So people will ask you, who is Nyenda to stop the HIAB, to stop the crane? Who is Nyenda to reject the people who are supposed to be coming in here because they have inadequate personal protective equipment? You are so stressed, you have responsibilities, but you don't have authority. So that is also an element of psychosocial risk, is actually a hazard. Then the organization should promote and support worker involvement in actively managing psychosocial risks. Managers can't do it solo. You need the workers. So that will lead us into another clause, which is 5.4, that we already know, that acknowledges that workers do not, managers, although they normally want to be at any given time, they must not go solo. It is important to ensure that consultation and participation. Consultation, ladies and gentlemen, means seeking opinion before making decisions, and participation means being involved in decision making. So when you just consult people, sometimes it is actually a stressor to them. It's stressing. But sometimes there are certain elements where they expect also to be involved in decision making. If you read your 5.4 of your ISO 5001 again, it explicitly says that. So this is the hub of the success of the psychosocial risk management. So in addition, just to the general areas of participation in consultation that are required in ISO 5001, this guideline then says you need to provide opportunities for feedback by workers to help the organization determine the effectiveness of the management of psychosocial risks. So tell them to provide feedback on the effectiveness of preventing bullying at the workplace, of preventing sexual harassment at the workplace, of preventing work overload, of preventing poor balances on work and social or home demands. Much as you ask them, and even probably institute an occupational hygiene survey to test the effectiveness of a respiratory protection program, where you have installed certain engineering controls to manage that. You are so keen to evaluate the effectiveness of those. You are so keen to evaluate the effectiveness of hearing conservation programs to the tune of actually having an audiometric center where you do audiometric surveys. But we are saying for the soft hazards, the feedback should also come from workers on whether sexual harassment is being managed, on whether work overloads are being managed, on whether the type of leadership and relationships among supervision is actually being managed well, on whether solo work or lone work is actually being managed, or any other source of risk, including the physical, mechanical stressors that can also then translate to mental or psychological stressors. Because sometimes a hot environment, a noisy environment can also be a mental stressor. So there is an intricate link between the conventional hazards and these ones as well. And the removal of barriers to participation is also an imperative in this. Ladies and gentlemen, where you fail to plan, you are actually planning to fail. It is on the same token that in any management system, you need to plan. The management of psychosocial risks from an ISO 45003 perspective is not supposed to be a coincidence. It has to be a deliberate effort where you design, you must engineer the psychosocial endpoint that you are looking at from occupational health and safety perspective. And I think those who are into ISO 45000 series of standards, you are aware that planning is all about the management or having actions to address risks and opportunities, where risks mainly speak to the negatives that can accrue to the organization, and opportunities relate to areas of improvement that can come as a result of either problems or any windows that can actually then come. So it becomes imperative now in these standards to identify psychosocial hazards and their associated risks and assess them. Then we plan actions to address them. And sometimes planning actions to address them may constitute setting objectives to manage psychosocial risks, where you are setting a physical risk hazard management related objective. You can still set a psychosocial risk management objective, where you set an action plan to address, let's say, respiratory threats. You can as well also set an action plan that will help you to achieve the management of these. So it is basically what we do, but now expanding this branch of psychosocial, which is risks, which is usually left out. What are the planning considerations? ladies and gentlemen, when you are now planning to manage psychosocial risks under Clause 6. The standard, this guideline does not give anything very, very new, but it tries to give you some hints on what to look at confined to psychosocial risks, while it acknowledges that you can also implement the other broad requirements that you get in the other clauses that talk about planning when you are in the general OHS. So the needs and expectations of particular groups of workers, you know, the effect of a hot environment, the weak effect of a poorly ventilated environment, the effect of a stressful boss, the effect of a stress of an unscrupulous subordinate, the effect of workload depends on human factors. So different work groups or particular groups of workers are affected differently. So we need to consider that those demographic characteristics that we talked about. Needs of specific workplaces or sets of operations or work tasks. There is a tendency, even in general management, of health and safety, of copying and pasting whatever you get from one organization to the other, from one department to the other. Need with the management protocols or plans that are sensitive to the diversity of operations and various tasks. So working solo when you are doing precarious tasks is different from working solo when you are just typing in office. So if you are working alone, you you are in a war zone, and you are working alone, and you are just in your office, I think that the level of stress is different. Working alone when you are at heights, and working alone and when you are on the ground, I think there is a difference there. So you need to consider the different setups. Results of the assessment of psychosocial risks should be considered when you are now planning for that, including the underlying causes of the psychosocial risks. So don't look symptoms, but also the causes. Eliminate psychosocial hazard. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, I'm hiding.
We have an internet issue.
Yes, so I'm hiding my camera at least to manage that risk. Management you must also consider the management of the process by reviewing and updating it to meet changing needs. So management changing an important consideration in doing that. And the resources that are needed should also be looked at. And at the same time, don't plan without workers. Don't plan without workers. You need to plan with your workers. Hazard identification is one important element in management systems. I think those who are into occupational health and safety, you can agree with me that the hub of occupational health and safety management system is the identification of that can injure you. It is the identification of that can cause your ill health coming from the workplace. So psychosocial risk management as well requires that hazard identification. And there's a particular clause that looks at that, but it requires an organization to establish, implement, maintain, and continually improve an ongoing process for the identification of psychosocial hazards and to be controlled to achieve effective outcomes that you need. Hazards of a psychosocial nature includes 3 main categories. If you have more than these, there is no problem. But this standard is just tried for presentation purposes to actually categorize them into 3 main categories. But it doesn't then say if you have more than those they do not fit here. They include aspects of how work is organized, social factors at work, work environment, equipment, and hazardous tasks. So from now onwards, I'm going to give you an overview of these hazards under these categories, so that even when you were to develop hazard risk registers, you are tired of having dust, respiratory threats as your risk, noise-induced hearing loss as your risk, electricity, electrocution as your risk, sustained bending, backache as your risk. You need to also look at these categories of hazards, aspects of how work is organized, social factors at work, the work environment where we work, what happens there, the physical and the social work environment, the equipment that we use, the materials that we handle, the methods that we use, all of them, they have the potential to cause psychosocial risks at our workplace. I will expand on aspects of how work is organized. Roles and expectations. Role ambiguity, ladies and gentlemen, role conflict, ladies and gentlemen, duty of care for other people, scenarios where workers do not have clear guidelines on the tasks they are expected to do and not to do. That is why even you see our laws, they tried, like, for example, the machinery regulations, RGN 302 of 1976, it will tell you that you can even give operators of machines written instructions. The duties of the supervisor in the Accident Prevention and Workers' Compensation Scheme, sometimes it wants you to give people clear instructions, even in writing, of what is supposed to be done. So the do's and don'ts, where you do not know the do's and the don'ts, you are stressed whether you are doing it well or you are not doing it well. Even performance targets, you are not sure whether you are actually on track or not, and what is going to imply to yourselves. Expectations within a role that undermine one another. So you are given certain roles, certain restrictions, as if you are somehow insane or you are incapable. You see, the restrictions that you are given say you cannot get to the western to this western side of the company. You must say to the eastern side of the company. When it comes to this time, you just bring it close to me, but I will put it in the camp. You just put it on my table. No, it is me who will read, as if you cannot. So there is something that you need to look at when you are giving people roles. I'm undermining another person. Do sequences about changes, tasks and work standards where you just this coronavirus we are on different strains from time to time. Before you know it, we have created this vaccine. We do not normally want to cause problems associated with treatment changes.
We can't hear you here in Rwanda.
Yes, it looks like they've had a network challenge there. I'm sure they're trying to reconnect. Maybe we can do a recap of what has been happening and also talk about comments. Like Mr. Gaylord said, it can affect and involve clients, customers, and visitors. Mr. Nimpaye, you could say something?
Come again, please, to the question.
I just said maybe you could give us a recap of what we were saying, your contribution, sir.
We will on the factors that we can come up with this driving psychosocial impact, where we have seen the different aspect of how the work is organized and the social factors at work environment and equipment. So there what I can add on. Hope it depends on the company organization and also the employer participation in health and safety. So if the employer does not give the priority to the health and safety, of course we will have this psychosocial impact for workers, because the employer will not take care his or her employees. So that is yeah, we have seen main challenge of the employers. So but our role as health and safety personnel or representative, we have to make sure that we have to fight until the issue is being solved. So if we speak up, maybe slow by slow it will change according to the situation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Valence. I also agree to you that, including Mr. Gaylord, who said worker feedback is very important in fostering a good safety culture and reducing accidents. Just like what Valence said, we need to speak up so that we can see change. I also see that our host, Fanira Group, is back online. Do you hear me, Fanira? Can you come through, please?
I can hear you. Sorry for that technical glitch. But even our guest is now back, so we'll give him the opportunity.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Doctor, can you come through?
Okay. Thank you very much for that. So I was actually explaining when it comes to hazards, identifying hazards associated with aspects of how work is organized, and I was expanding on roles and expectation. I think I was done on that one. Another area of hazards associated with how work is organized that presents a lot of psychosocial risks is job control or autonomy. If you have limited opportunity to participate in decision making, I think no one wants to be a yes man for everything, but you also want to feel like you are part of the procedures that you are actually using for work. Lack of control over workload, everybody just tells you must fill in this, but it's actually no. Guys, we also have this more work that you actually are supposed to be doing. It also is something that we need to look at, to consider as a source of hazard. Low levels of influence and independence is not being able to influence the speed, order, or schedule for tasks and workload. Organizational change management. Organization will change, whether we like or not. We can change raw materials, we can change management, we can change the structure, we can reinvent technologies. They change. Even people themselves, they change. But what is stressful is poor management of change. So lack of practical support to assist workers during transition period, achieving what we are supposed to be achieving, but now other people are working from home when others are working physically at the workplace. I'm supposed to be submitting
Looks like we're having a bad network day today. The doctor was just highlighting on the aspects of how work must be organized, talking of job control and autonomy, organizational change, management. He was talking about the lack of practical support to assist workers during transition periods and prolonged or recurring restructuring. Um, Fanira, is the doctor back online or is trying to reconnect?
Not yet. We are trying to fix our problem here. Can continue with the discussion. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So maybe we can talk about our experiences that we have in our workplaces, just like what Valence was saying. Diana, I see your mic is on. Do you want to say something?
No, not really.
Okay, it is well. Thank you. Anyone who wants to share their experience, we can go back to our, yes, Koketso, come through, please.
Yes, thank you, sir. No, I just want to also emphasize on the issue of management change. We need to take into cognizance the fact that when this change is happening, be it a small one or it's a bigger one, management must consider consultation with the employees at the first stage, because in the first instances, you find that the management does not actually, consult employees when they want to make these changes. For an example, if maybe they want to consider another use of type of PPE to the employees, maybe they are exposed to this type of hazards, and then they don't consider consulting these employees. In turn, what would happen in most cases? You'd find that the PPE being chosen by management on their own, as they believe it's going to actually protect the people, it doesn't happen to be the proper PPE that the employees would actually apply and then be able to wear. And then you'd find that it actually, provide another risk into other employees. So my point actually, I want to say, when management wants to actually introduce a change, they must first consider consulting with the employees, representatives like the safety reps, your union representatives, so that no one is left behind with that type of change. And they must also communicate why are they bringing that change, because there's an issue with job security. People will now asking themselves, are our jobs now at risk or whatnot? So they must also bring the reason as to, okay, we are bringing this change into the forefront because of it will bring the benefits of 1, 2, 3 to the organization. And also the employees can also voice out their input in that change. So I think in an nutshell, the consultation is a very, 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 very important aspect. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Koket. So I agree with you that communication is very key when it comes to management bringing changes into the workplace. Let us consider, let us prioritize the employee. Let's let them be part of the process so that they can also accept the change. There is a contribution from Guy Lord who says good practice in relation to psychosocial risk management essentially reflects good practice in organizational management, learning development, social responsibility, and so on. So maybe Guy Lord, you would want to enlighten us on your contribution, sir.
Can you hear me?
Yes, please go through.
Good psychosocial risk management means good business. In that light, it is important that most generic risk assessment over the years have excluded noting down psychosocial risks associated with people working at workplaces. And often at times, accidents end up occurring, and there's a difficulty in determining the causality of that accident. So in managing psychosocial issues at the workplace, it in turn means a good business and a return on the investment, and also the reduction of accidents at the. That's my contribution.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. I see that our guest is back online. Doctor, you can carry on. Sorry for the glitch on the network.
Okay. Thank you very much. It's expected in our context, and that is all you find in terms of what the topic that we are actually talking or sharing on. We talked about another aspect of how work is organized that is a source of psychosocial hazards, is job control or autonomy. We talked about organizational change. We talked about issues of roles and expectations. Now I was now on organizational change and management. We talked about lack of support during transition, prolonged or recurring restructuring. Say every now and again you are restructuring. People are changing, probably the shareholders and the restructure, or even management restructure. And or sometimes it takes to eternity to do that. People will be stressed, say, where will I be actually positioned when it comes to that? And to just buttress what these the discussion that you were actually superintending over, that point on consultation, lack of consultation and communication about workplace changes, or which is of poor quality, untimely, or not meaningful. So there can be some times where changes occur and you keep them close to your chest like they are jokers. You need really to make people aware of the changes, or the communication. If you do it, it is so as if its changes are classified and people will be stressed. And sometimes you need to know the timing of doing some of these things. Job demands can also be sources of hazards. You are a PhD holder, but your duty is just to open the door for other guys to come in, your superiors. So the underuse of skills, sometimes you feel like I am an officer who has gone through all the nibosh, and I'm actually a chartered occupational health and safety scientist or environmental practitioner. But people just send you really to do a grape sample of effluent or water from a certain river from where you draw water. And they do not even give you the opportunity even actually be it. So the underuse of skills is also stressful. That is why HR should be alert on those things. Continual, even if they are paying well. Continual work exposure to interaction with people, e.g. the public, customers, students, patients. I think people were talking about clients can be a problem. Let's say you are working at a hospital, for example. A lot of people will be coming with different conditions. Yes, these guys, they took an oath that they will save us, they are not going to shun us. We often see papers, headline titles in newspapers or the print media that probably a certain woman gave birth by the bench while they're waiting, nurses were over lunch and all these things. We need to understand that these also are people.
Are you still on, Doctor? Are you still on? Okay, I think he's struggling with the network again. I saw a question on if the meeting is being recorded. Yes, it's being recorded. You can carry on, Doctor, if you are hearing me. We can't hear you for now. There's a Gaylord's contribution. We can't hear you, Doctor. Could you move to a better spot? We can't hear you. There is a Gaylord who says it's very important that managers and workers have ownership of the psychosocial risk management process. Top management should be able to demonstrate leadership and commitment for psychosocial risk management to be successful. It boils down to the issue of communication. Allow your people to speak out to help and guide you through the process so that safety maintains and becomes an issue of priority. Kokeso, you can come through.
Say again, sir. I didn't
Yes,
copy.
I saw your mic on. You can come through.
Oh, okay. I was not aware that my mic is on. But however, in terms of the input, yeah, I think it is also very, very pertinent that when we're talking about these issues with related to psychological aspect, I think the issue of work demand, the unclear roles and responsibilities, the relationships between the worker and employer, those are boiling down to health and safety management styles that the organization must re-emphasize, that they need to be those people who are carrying the responsibilities to oversee that those things are actually being carried in line with the requirements. It needs to be completed as such. I think one of the biggest mistakes that the organizations are doing is to undermine workers in inputs, where workers are now making inputs of their, or it can be inputs due to their experience or inputs due to their exposure in danger. Then you turned out that those top management, for as long as they haven't seen it happen in the workplace, they will always say, no, you don't know. I'm the only one who knows better than you because I'm the manager. And so as it boils down to the non-conformances that the companies will always find, that when the auditors are coming into place and then they find non-conformances, that's when now they will try to open their eyes. So I think this is a very good example of those health and safety management systems under the work demands and roles and responsibilities and the relationships between the worker and the employer.
Okay, thank you very much, Kokeso, for the contribution. Because we are having network glitches, I'm just going to highlight on what our next session will be. Our host will talk about it at the end of the session, but we're going to be talking about the art of executing safe shutdowns. That's going to be on Friday, the 4th of June. Let's look forward to it. Let's keep the discussions alive. Safety is a paramount thing. Koketo mentioned about undermining workers. Management should be able to involve workers in the process. They are also stakeholders in the business, and safety is of paramount concern. I'm just moving to the chat, and Twenderai talked about work-life balance, a total wellness package, and 3 coping skills: stress management competence, anxiety surveys, depression surveys, psychosocial risk profiling, openness culture, proactive and not reactive approach. Those are the key takeaways that we can actually get that are being talked about in this episode. Let's not wait to react to disasters. Let's be proactive. Let's do some profiling. Let's do some surveys and see how things are going with our employees, and not wait for a disaster. And Gaylord says, as workplace contexts differ, there is need to optimize the design of the risk management activities to guide the process and maximize the validity and benefit of the outcome. Tailoring improves the focus, reliability, and validity of risk management process, as well as the utilization of results of risk assessment and the feasibility of results, and helps to make effective action plans. We cannot go anywhere without action plans. I can see our host, Fanira group, is reconnecting. We are just having a bad network day. Thank you very much, Guylord, for the contribution and active discussion. Thanks to technology, we are connecting from different geological locations, but on the other way, the network is also letting us down otherwise. So let's go to our YouTube channel and subscribe. We are present on LinkedIn, on Instagram as well, and Facebook. I'll get them posted, the links in the chat area. I'm just checking. Yes, we have our host and guest back online. Could you please come through, host? Do you
Yes,
hear me?
thank you.
There is some
Today's today is a bad day.
Okay, thank you everyone for staying online. I think our guests and hosts are back online now, and I'm also back online. Thank you for staying online, and thank you, Ranga, for keeping the discussion going. Teach, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Thank you. Sorry for we've been having a bad day today, but I think we'll proceed now. Our guest is connected. Mr. Nyenda, are you ready? Dr. Nyenda? Yes. Okay. I think I'm giving this opportunity to Dr. Nyenda. Thank you, Tony.
Okay, we hear you quite well. You can go through, Dr. Nyenda. So, in the meantime, Guylord is talking about.
Thank you very much for that. We were talking about job demands and underuse of skills, continuous exposure to interaction with people. And I was giving an example of if you are working at a hospital and there are a lot of patients who come in different ways, being human and all the pressures. Some are actually thinking you are not even saving them, or some of them are even also very aggressive and so forth. We work with the public. We also has different backgrounds and different ways of failing themselves. You work with students and a number of things. Having too much to do with a certain time or with within a certain time or with a certain number of with a certain time or with these things that you must be doing at one point in time. Others are multitaskers, others are moderate multitaskers, others are not even multitaskers. So if you look at that and you think it is one size fits all, you are actually creating psychosocial hazards in the workplace. And realistic expectations of workers' competence to say yes, we are working in an environment where we are just in the workplace. So you say you think everybody is already multi-skilled, didn't even invest in multi-skilling of that worker or in competence building, but you are now expecting that guy who is actually acting as last man standing at the workplace, and you expecting a lot of things from them. Dreams are okay, but they can also create some psychosocial lack of task, variety of performing highly repetitive tasks. You'll be doing the same things over and over. Requirements for excessive periods of alertness, where you are supposed to be very concentrating, looking either at a visual display unit or any other things. Then working with aggressive or distressed people, it is also a job demand. That is a hazard. I am going to get to remote and isolated work. There are areas where you need to be working remotely or alone, isolated, working in locations that are far from home, family, friends, and unusual. Perhaps you fly in and you fly out due to your work arrangements. Those are also sources of psychosocial risks that you need to also consider when you are doing that risk assessment, to say if people are working away from their homes, from their friends, from their families, and other social support networks, what is it that can affect them, and it can contribute to a lot of problems. And then how then do you manage that? I think that was that is why sometimes where people who opened minds sometime long back had to create homes in very remote areas, so that sometimes a person will bring their families, or either they will feel at home, and they are provided with some social support networks, some entertainment and other things. Working alone in non-remote locations without social or human interactions, e.g. when we are working at home, this COVID has given us a new working order, but you can actually also be stressed where you are working home, where you're used to say 5 minutes you go to a colleague and you discuss about work matters. You are alone at home, and sometimes you are not even connected, and you don't have even that network. And sometimes where you are also working at home, you don't need the resources that you will actually get at work, but they are supposed to be meeting the job demands, working in private homes and so forth. Job security and precarious work, there are a number of things that you can talk about that. For example, uncertainty regarding work availability, including the set hours, possibilities of redundancy, or temporary loss of work with reduced pay. It happens. Low paid or insecure employment, including non-standard employment, where you're just saying, you need to, that can be stressful. Yes, I've taken it because I am poor and I was looking for that opportunity, but there will be a war in my actually my head about that situation. We need to look at that. Workload and work pace. Perhaps you are working with machines that have high speed, and you are supposed to be the attendant, and you cannot match that. That is why sometimes we get HR doing some Dover tests to look at others who do psychometric tests, at least to look at how you can cope to those situations. Work hours and schedules where you have no variety of where you work. The shifts, inflexible work schedules, unpredictable hours, to say you are always on standby. And sometimes you can work for long hours, even stretching into unsociable hours. Like ourselves, sometimes when we will be developing these standards, working in work groups, especially on Zoom, it was better when it was physical meetings, you are in one room. But when it is now Zoom meetings, and all experts from around the world are supposed to be meeting, sometimes it is 7 p.m. here, and sometimes it is 2 a.m. in another country, and vice versa. And sometimes you need to be working in unsociable hours, such as 2 a.m., trying to contribute into the development of a standard. It is actually stressful. Social factors at work, which is another category. Interpersonal relationships, such as poor communication, poor relationships between managers, supervisors, co-workers, clients, or other workers. Interpersonal conflicts, harassment, bullying. We have heard about this, including the use of electronic media, the cyber bullying that we also had in the box talk. Lack of social support and equal power relationships between dominant and non-dominant groups of workers. In a group of people, there is always a dominant person, and others who suffer silently as they are being dominated. Social and physical isolation is also part of those social factors at work that are hazards. Leadership, lack of clear vision and objectives, your management style. There are a lot of people who say, and so forth. That, yes, you're saying, oh, young man, you don't know I'm the guy who butters your bread. You see who I am. I will show you I'm made of steel and stuff. We have heard those things. People being even threatened to say, I will chase you out of my place, get out of my plant. just because you have divergent opinion and people are using their position in the organogram or their pay slip really to frustrate low people. Failing to listen or only casually listening to complaints and suggestions, I can pick using non-verbal intonations that whenever even you have put some platforms for you to consult, it's just a window dressing exercise. The non-verbal intonations, as we do face-to-face, it will tell me that that is casual listening. It's stressful. Providing inadequate communication and support, lack of accountability, lack of fairness, inconsistent and poor decision-making practices, abuse and misuse of power. You can see that guy who said, "Get out of my room," from Norway. That leadership styles in society, people would say that others are bosses, others are leaders, others are managers. That is not the subject of the matter here, but we are saying our leadership style goes a long way in influencing health and safety at the workplace. Organizational work group culture, where you can have a culture of poor relaying of information from point A to point B and poor feedback mechanisms, low support levels in problem solving, where you don't define whatever you want to achieve, but you just push people to actually commit to working without knowing really what they're supposed to be doing, and inconsistent and untimely application of policies and procedures, which is basically selective application of this, where those who have weight will actually have some soft approaches, and those obviously who are light on the organogram will actually have the heavy hand of the policies. Recognition and rewards, I think we know the principle of positive reinforcement and negative reinforcement, and how it can influence health and safety as well as even productivity in organizations. Because we don't need to go technical health and safety, we can sometimes also link the benefits to the organization. So an imbalance between workers' effort and formal and informal recognition and reward is something that is very, that is also very, very stressful. At one point, I was actually a subject of that, and I would always raise it with my HR, and they would promise heaven on earth, never to bring the heaven down. And sometimes I had to leave. Lack of appropriate acknowledgement and appreciation of workers' efforts in a fair and timely manner is healing mentally, and it actually can even prevent work-related illnesses to just acknowledge and appreciate. However, the level of appreciation, but that acknowledgement is very, very important. People are in organizations not only to help the organizations, but also to develop themselves as they are there. It's a reality that we need to understand. Career development is very, very important. Where you stagnate like ephemeral water ponds, it is actually very, very stressful. Career stagnation and uncertainty. Sometimes under promotion, you say you have promoted me, you have added 1%, but 1% of zero is basically zero. Under promotion or sometimes over promotion is also stressful. That is why sometimes you get an MD coming to a lasher to ask them why they failed to meet a target, and actually threatening them to lose their job when they are taking more positions or roles above that person. So over promotion sometimes is also stressful. You don't know what to do with it, and you don't give people opportunities to develop skills or for continuous professional development. Then where you have lack of support from your co-workers, supervisors, and other interested parties, it is actually also a problem. Issues of civility and respect, lack of trust, honesty, respect, and fairness, lack of respect and consideration in interactions among workers and clients and customers is also a part of that category. And the issues related to supervision, where you lack constructive supervision, constructive encouragement, you lack good communication, lack shared vision, lack support, and a number of things about supervision. Failure to balance work and life, violence at work, it has been referred to quite a lot. Abuse, threats, assaults, whether they are physical, verbal, or sexual. I think physical harassment is there. It depends on the type of work. If it is in transport, where you have mawindi and stuff, this is very, very common. Where there is a lot of manual work, it is also very, very common. But verbal abuse is there even in the organization that you think has a lot of standards, because people who have high positions, they use their lips to destroy somebody with threats. Then this issue of sexual harassment, I think the labor laws, they, particularly our Labor Act addresses it is very, very well. It's very, very common. And we are now going into an era where these things are viewed as not just general welfare issues, but as also occupational health and safety issues. When you hear a person come to audit and they want to look at what you are doing about sexual harassment, don't think that they're now moving out of occupational health and safety. Normally, people do not want to hear it because the chief culprits are the top people in that organization. Okay, that's fine. We need to also ensure that we manage that type of harassment. Then we also have unwanted, offensive and intimidating behavior of a sexual or non-sexual nature, where we also probably target individuals by their race, by their gender, by their religion, by their sexual orientation, by their abilities and disabilities, by their age. Many often times we blow trumpets in their ears, making a lot of noise, trying actually to, on the way, actually stressing them. We need to look at that. I'm not going to talk a lot about victimization has been talked about. I am going to work environment, equipment, and hazardous tasks. We know we work within a certain work environment where we have infrastructure at the buildings, with their designs, how we have installed our equipment and try to make it safe work. But we can still get stressed by how we have, by the work environment, both the physical work environment and the social environment, which includes how we relate to each other as well. The equipment is, such as machinery, means to make life easier or work easy, but they can also be a source of our demise. And some tasks are just hazardous. So I will speak about what the ISO 45003 requires us or recommends us to do when it comes to managing, to identification of work environment, equipment, and hazardous tasks as psychosocial hazards. Inadequate equipment availability. You would think that lack of availability of equipment is production oriented. But when you're running an integrated management system, think about the effect of lack of equipment availability to health and safety, psychosocial risks, because other people are so committed, are so into it in terms of wanting to achieve, and they are already seeing their targets that they've been given in a performance contract not being met, and the mitigation perhaps is not going to be taken. And if there is inadequate equipment, they are stressed. The suitability of the equipment is a liability. Engineering, you are supposed to be actually making sure that the liability and availability of the equipment is there. And you normally are fighting with production personnel. You are actually posing some psychosocial risks on them by failure to make their equipment available, because they will be also chasing their targets. It will move out of failure to meet production targets and get into unwanted health and safety outcomes. But we must be able to assess that. How many people have been going that far when it comes to hazard identification? Poor workplace conditions such as lack of space. You work like everything is a confined space, where there is poor illumination and where there is excessive noise. Yes, these things, illumination is covered under factories registration, and we normally have it, but it is always covered in the general health and safety, but probably just to make sure that work happens, but it is actually a stressor. Then where there is no space and excessive noise as well. Working in extreme conditions such as extreme temperatures, high or low, and sometimes working at heights, that's the imagination of what will happen to you if you fall is actually stressful. I've had incidents where we hear people are involved in an accident, a vehicle overturns and it is actually rolling. You go to them, you do not see any bruise, but they are dead. So that experience is just stressful and it can actually then take the lives of the people. And working in unstable environments such as conflict zones, then assessment of risks and opportunities, ladies and gentlemen, is a way of managing these psychosocial risks. I think if you read ISO 45001, you know, after having identified your hazards, say in clause 6.121, you are supposed then to assess the risks and opportunities, and I defined them earlier on. And from a psychosocial risk perspective, you need to provide information about the potential harm to the people about these hazards that we're talking about. You need to consider when you are doing the risks exposures to different groups. You must also consider the interaction of psychosocial risks with the risks from other identified hazards. Like I'm saying, other chemical or mechanical hazards, how can they contribute to psychosocial risks and even biological hazards. We can take the coronavirus as a biological hazard that causes COVID. But obviously, the mere fact that I am sneezing and I am working in a communal office with you is more than stressful, perhaps more than stressing than even your dust, your noise, and other issues, considering how deadly this COVID is all about. There is also need to prioritize this and to consider the diversity of workforce and the needs of various people in your workplace. So what you do to a workplace, you know, you have young workers, you have workers. I think doing one or two things who are saying in terms of the works that are given even to ladies are somehow different. They are a little bit fancy to maintain that they are ladies. The safety shoe as well, and so forth. We are not saying we must sacrifice the other risk management imperatives to wanting to look at this, but let us look at that as we do our social risk assessment. Thank you very much for that one. I will go to objectives to address psychosocial risks. I think I talked about them already, where we must establish, measure, and develop and implement plans to achieve them. And we need to support, just like in an ISO standard, this psychosocial risk management, where we need to think about resources, the people, the competence of the people who identify psychosocial risks, rather than just everybody, those who then manage the psychosocial risks. We need to think about the competencies that are required, understand processes for reporting and raising concerns. We must also think about how to make people aware of, for example, reporting mechanisms to those and how to handle psychosocial risk problems, and the communication that has to be done between management and non-managerial workers. And in making your awareness, the importance of top management must be emphasized in psychosocial risk management so that they will change themselves before they try to change another person. Actions workers can take to address psychosocial hazards should be taken into that. People should be told what exactly to do. Don't leave actions to address psychosocial hazards vague, because it becomes even stressful, because a person doesn't know that if they then act this way, are they not going to actually face certain sanctions? The potential benefits of sharing experiences by workers must be considered, and other interested parties' existing knowledge need to integrate awareness of psychosocial risks in policies, and they need to identify and take actions to eliminate stigma or discrimination. Those things should be done. But above all, ladies and gentlemen, we are talking about psychosocial risks where you are affecting the mind. When the mind is being affected, it is all sensitive to anything, any processes of dealing with that process. Even if you are managing it to help that guy, but if you are not sensitive in terms of what you do, it becomes also a problem. So confidentiality is also a requirement or a recommendation in this ISO 5003. You must maintain the confidentiality of either information that is documented or not documented with respect to an individual's work experience on psychosocial risk, not to go to town and broadcast everything that is done about it. Even if sometimes we need to be open, but you need to look at the sensitivity of the matter. And you are telling everybody that that woman was actually sexually abused. You are telling everyone that now we are going with them to the hospital. Now they are now being rehabilitated. Now they are being tested for HIV, and these are the results. It cannot be like that. We need to uphold the confidentiality when we are managing these. Otherwise, we will create a psychosocial risk on way to actually managing a psychosocial risk. You must protect against the disclosure of the outcomes following exposure to those. You must inform workers of any limits that apply to confidentiality. Inform them about the limits. This can be divulged, this cannot. Then, ladies and gentlemen, once we have gotten that support, it will be important now to control the hazards and the risks that we have been profiling. And clause 8, just like in ISO 45001 of 2018, is there to look at that. It tries to give a hierarchy of risk control where possible. But sometimes where it is not possible, you just use those recommendations that are there. But what is important, you may need to eliminate those hazards. You then need to reduce the psychosocial risks or consider possibilities of doing that. You need to analyze existing controls that are in place if you are supposed to be controlling the risks effectively. You cannot move to improve without knowing the baseline. Know what is there. Say something about its effectiveness or its status and craft an improvement plan. Review and analyze those existing controls. Then come up with strategies with a long term. We don't want perishable solutions, but long-term solutions to manage issues that will affect the well-being of people. And you implement these and you always sustain them. Ladies and gentlemen, as I said, as we started, psychosocial risk controls can be primary, can be secondary, can be tertiary. Where primary are at organizational level that are aimed to prevent the manifesting of these hazards and their aids, and to promote well-being. Then once those controls somehow fail, we must have secondary interventions which will result in the of them there is of way.
I'm sure Mr. Nyenda is having a technical challenge there, but he was talking about psychosocial risk control, where he was saying that when managing psychosocial risks, a combination of the following levels of intervention can actually be used. That is the primary, the secondary, and the tertiary. With the primary, the organizational level controls to prevent and reduce harmful effects and promote well-being at work. And where these fail, we move on to secondary measures through which we can talk about increasing resources that assist workers to deal with psychosocial risks by raising awareness and understanding through effective training and other appropriate measures. Just to finish off the slide, he was talking about there's also tertiary psychosocial risk control, where you talk about reducing the harmful effects of exposure to psychosocial hazards by implementing rehabilitation programs and taking other corrective and supportive measures. So, are you back, Doctor? Are you back online, Dr. Nyenda?
Yes, I am. I'm back, Ranga. Thank you.
Okay, Doctor, you can carry on.
Can you hear me, Ranga? I'm back. Thank you very much for bailing me out there.
Yes, you can carry on, Doctor. You're welcome.
Okay, thank you very much. Just to recap on what he said, we have primary interventions that are necessarily to interventions that are made to at organizational level to prevent the harmful effects of these psychosocial risks. Then secondary, it is there now to assist workers to deal with psychosocial risks. Let's say they have actually manifested. The first one is preventive. The second one is now so that you cope with that one. Then it is active. So if actually to cope, then the last one is actually to more like to rehabilitate and to restore, so that when you come back, even to work, you are rehabilitated, even the to work protocols are manageable. That's your 3 levels of categories of sources of harm. So here I'm going to just give an overview how you manage risks related to work organization, and how you manage risk related to social factors, how you manage risk associated to work environment, equipment, and hazardous tasks, and they cross-referencing in this ISO 45003, much as it is there also in ISO 45001, because it is control to these same hazards that we have identified in 6.12. Okay, so measures to control risks related to work organization, they include increasing workers' control over what they do, allowing them breaks to manage fatigue, restricting work-related conduct, mobile phone, email in non-working time, so that you don't have to call your worker from time to time, even if they are actually home. Consulting workers and where they exist, workers' representatives about workplace changes and how these affect them, defining work roles, supervisor relationships and performance requirements to minimize ambiguity and confusion. Prioritizing tasks and allowing flexible time of work, not to always work the calendar or the hours of the day for anything, even if how hard it is. You are saying, I need it by tomorrow. I need it on my desk by 10 o'clock. I need it on my desk in my inbox by 2 o'clock. Perhaps the report is quite a thesis. You need to look at that. Allocating work ties to workers in supporting cyber risk, work-related stresses, bullying, and so forth, that can actually also work. Then examples of measures that can be put in place to manage hazards.
Sounds like we are having another technical glitch there, but Koketso was just commenting on this being an informative session. I agree with you, and also allude to what you are saying, that we wish managers could attend sessions like these so that we can all be knowledgeable. And my suggestion would be that let's invite more people on the next session so that eventually it gets where it's supposed to be, and we can break those communication barriers. The doctor was just talking about work pressures and the dissertation type of reports that are not given ample time to be prepared, putting pressure, unnecessary pressure onto the worker. So it's something that I can take home from what the doctor has been saying and what Koketso has just commented. Our host, Fanira, are you there? Yeah, can you share the screen, please? Yes, so just to recap, he was talking about psychosocial risks, risk control measures that are related to those social factors. He spoke about disability issues in the workplace, and myself being a person who lives with a disability, I sometimes go through the negative comments at the workplace, the pressures of work, the short timelines that actually do not take into consideration my limited abilities or slowness in approach to things. The doctor mentioned the increasing awareness of psychosocial risks and providing information and training to workers on how to prevent them. Let's teach our workers. Let's make them part of the process. Let us also encourage early reporting of issues by workers by demonstrating organizational commitment to providing supportive, respectful work environment and maintaining confidentiality. There are issues that our employees would want to actually talk about to employers, but if we don't break those communication barriers, it will prove to be difficult for them to actually communicate. Talking of accidents, our safety is our main theme, but talking of accidents, you are going to realize that if the employer is like a predator and the employee being prey, they will not report the near misses. And as you can agree with me, most accidents have been near misses for quite some time. It was also suggested that there is need to establish support measures for workers who are experiencing negative impacts from exposure to psychosocial risks. Then there is the developing of organizational policies and guidance that outline expected work behaviors and how unacceptable behavior will actually be managed. You are going to agree with me that there's a lot of sexual harassment in workplaces, but people take it as very normal, especially in the industry where women are limited or are not many. They would come to accept that, well, we're working with men, this is what it is. But we're actually affecting their psychosocial aspects of their work life. On that slide, he also mentioned about providing specific instructions on how to manage foreseeable risks. Can you move on to the next slide for me, please? Maybe we can just look at what he was going to present. Doctor, are you back online?
Yes, yes, I'm back online, Ranga. Thank you very much for that.
Okay.
Yes. Okay. So basically, Ranga talked about the social factors that are the measures that can be put in place to manage the social, psychosocial factors or social factors at the workplace. I think it was clear from that. What is very, very important is anything that is foreseeable, let us be seen to be managing it. Actually, let us also be ahead looking at what can possibly go wrong psychosocially, and we try to manage it. It requires shaping up. And thank you very much, Ranga, for a good point there, where sometimes we have accepted substandard practices or malpractices because we think it is the norm. And I think it's a standard that is actually going to help change there. Don't be the first one to report a non-conformity on it. Yes, we know there are guidelines, but there are guidelines to enlighten those who will guide you, who will be assessing you on serious issues that are certifiable. Let's say you are gunning for certification and the auditor has read how to approach psychosocial issues during auditing. They can ask you, and if you fail to prove those things, sometimes it becomes very, very serious. Notwithstanding that other people are also psychosocial hazards to those who then prey on themselves. It is, we need really to look at that. We can do that by providing training to develop awareness. We can also provide access to information about support services. Do not hide information about support services, because people will still be, you know, when you have a problem and you don't know where to vent it, who can assist you, it becomes even a mega problem. So if you tell them about support services, each time you have a problem that will load the mind, you won't overload it, because you are going to lose it when you are given the right platform really to be discussing about that. Even occupational health services that you may be having internally or externally, I think, you know, it is the duty of the employer to provide occupational health services. If you look at the Convention 155 on occupational health and safety, as well as the Convention 161 on occupational health services, we need actually to ensure those are there. Confidential debriefing, counseling, and conflict mediation services, we need to give them information about those things. Provide information to workers about their rights and their responsibilities. You know, if you ask people, I've always asked the students sometimes to say, has the law adequately covered workers' rights on occupational health and safety? People will tell you a lot, and their argument, they say yes, then they start citing duties of workers, section 15, subsection 5 of our own laws. The SI 68 of 1990. There is a difference between a duty and a right. In our constitution, workers in section 65, subsection 1, workers have a right to safe labor practices. Then in section 6 of the Labor Act, if it is our country, the same, we have, workers have rights to safe work practices. So tell people about their rights when it comes to the avoidance of overload, when it comes to communication, when it comes to protection from any sources of harm, as well as their responsibilities, recognizing and rewarding workers, promoting workplace that is free of work-related violence, and providing support for victims. Right. Then with respect to the measures that may really manage hazards related to work environment, equipment, and hazardous tasks. These may include providing, the list is not exhaustive, ladies and gentlemen, but they include providing and maintaining appropriate equipment for performing the work, improving work surroundings and physical workplace features to isolate or protect workers from hazards, isolating or protecting workers from psychosocial hazards, e.g. with the physical barriers to reduce risk of violence, providing and requiring the use of appropriate and effective personal protective equipment where there are risks that cannot be minimized using one effective higher order controls. So you can't put an exhaust fan. You cannot, you can still not provide a respirator. It can't. You need to do that. You can't cool the environment, but still you can't provide water to rehydrate. You cannot even provide some schedules for work rest regimes. It can't be like that. So sometimes you really need to also make sure that these things are included as you want to manage risks associated with that. But what are the signs of exposure to psychosocial risks? We need to be alert. Don't move blindly, because in areas, in other risk areas, you can then say, what are the signs that this place is hazardous? No, you can say, no, there are spills. No, I can actually get some, if there is some gas that is coming by, people are told about the characteristics of that gas, including the smell, and probably what it does to the eye or even to the nose or to other senses. then you detect that no, hydrogen sulfide, the smell of a rotten egg. But what is the smell of a psychosocial risk? We do not have it. We need to go there and actually have those such as changes in behavior. Let us look at whether workers are changing in their behaviors, because people have a tendency of changing their behaviors when they are actually stressed. Social isolation or withdrawal, increased absence from work, and a lot of excuses, sometimes not even excuses, lack of engagement. A person feels useless and they think that they can go solo, reduce energy in doing something. You were so enthusiastic, your subordinate was so enthusiastic, now they are steaming off, they have deflated. You need to look at, suspect that there could be psychosocial hazards that are manifesting as risks now in this organization. So HR, if you thought it is a person who has done occupational hygiene, as in knowing the chemistry, the biology, the properties of the stressor and the exposure pathways, who can superintend over health and safety, you are now supposed to be repent abundantly and bring yourselves to the table and say, because I'm a psychologist, I'm a social scientist, I can actually also contribute to these issues by doing psychosocial economic surveys that will unpack this, and it may be important input into management reviews that will decide on the continued suitability, adequacy, and suitability of your occupational health and safety management system in general. Others are high staff turnover. People think people will just live for greener pastures alone, but others will say, no, I can't endure work. Low quality performance, yes, those who thought customer satisfaction and product realization that you get in ISO 9001 is also just influenced by the raw material, by the equipment, whether it is in specs, or those calibration that you're getting, and getting customer requirements, documenting them, where they are changing them, you do whatever you do, and you ensure that you test that as is related to the quality, and to the tune that organizations have laboratories for checking that quality in line with customer satisfaction. But we are saying one way that can actually cause a non-conforming product is a psychosocial risk. And I can't concentrate. I don't see even, I'm not even motivated to even check and to be rigorous. Reduce the desire to work with others, conflicts, unwilling to conflict, bullying. There are people who actually are just volatile, and they actually want to prevail over others, increase the frequency of incidents and errors. So we may also want to look at those. I think those who look at the statistics of injuries, which we are taught even from at any low level, we were told about 8 accidents are caused by, they do not just happen. 80% are caused by human factors. And some of these human factors speak to the issues of psychosocial risks that we are talking about. I earlier on said change is inevitable in organizations. We need to manage them just like we manage changes in equipment, just like we manage changes in work procedures, in other risks, and try to look at the impact of change to the psychological well-being, psychological health and well-being of a person. And changes to work tasks are examples, changes to legal requirements, changes in knowledge, and changes in technologies. Just imagine you want to have a Zoom meeting with your shop floor workers who are never even connected to any email within your company. And now you're supposed to be doing that. Just imagine you've just imported a technology, a production line from Germany, and it has been assembled by the Germans, and you expect your workers to still produce that how they were producing last time. They take time to understand those things. Let's look at those mental issues. If you are hard on them when they're still learning or on induction, it becomes a problem. Procurement is also, and contracting and outsourcing are also things that can affect the general health and safety as well as psychological. So what are the things that we need to take into account that can affect psychosocial, the psychological health and well-being at the workplace? How the procurement of products and services creates risks, the scheduling of delivery of products and services impacting on the organization. The process of buying and making sure that something is coming on time and so forth, even the deliveries for those who will be just waiting, is stressful. How the engagement of contractors can impact workplace culture. You are bringing a person who is foreign as in course, foreign to your organization. They are not part of the workplace culture. They are not going to change overnight. They will bring a different culture, which can be stressful, and it can also be stressful to them. Worker roles and expectations, how the outsourcing of activities impacts on schedules. You know, when you see your organization hiring, and you are a contractor, you think that you are going to be replaced, yours is not going to be renewed. You need really to look at that, because issues of job security also need to be looked at. Changes in supervision and the quality of work. How the shared duty to protect and promote the health and safety and well-being of workers is managed by the organization, its contractors and suppliers. You know, sometimes when you are working as two organizations at one place, you have a shared duty to ensure safety. So one can input into the other, one can actually output into the other. A problem in one of the partners can be vented into the other and manifest there. And that link should actually be looked at, and you need actually to manage that. So those are the problems associated with services, where you outsource, where you contract, and where you procure services and products. Others will even give you things that will actually be a problem to use them during procurement. So when you procure 3 quotations cheapest, you are going to affect the operator. The accountant, you have made them smile that I have saved, and because on their balance scorecard, they have a proportion for saving costs, they are going to score 100%, if not 120%. But for the operator whom we have given some poor equipment, they are failing to meet their core target, which forms probably 80% or 70% of their assessment. So you are actually shifting the problem for yourself and the other, creating problem as well. So procurement becomes also a source of psychosocial risk, where those who procure will do it so that it just, their stores are filled, their warehouses are filled. Yet they are now transferring the problem to the Department of Procurement, with service departments, with the production department. Ladies and gentlemen, we can speak this as if images are a sure case where people operate, and one events that are detrimental, that can be catastrophic, but of a psychosocial nature. So we need to uphold the principles of prevention, mitigation, of preparedness, of response if there is a problem, and of recovery. I think this is the spirit that we have actually gotten in the standard, where we're talking about primary, secondary, and tertiary controls. You can talk about primary to prevent, you can talk about responses that are actually secondary, and issues of recovery, which that we are actually tertiary issues. In this, some talking in an emergency, we don't want psychosocial risk incident that is manifested, where there's been bullying, where there's been social harassment, where there's been a workplace stress due to overload, and so forth. We need that. Where there is a pandemic, a lot of unrest due to the pandemic, and so forth. We need to recognize that emergency situations impact psychological health and safety well-being. We prepare for inclusion of appropriate care in the planned response emergency situations. We must establish priorities when responding to those emergencies, also looking at the different needs. Sometimes you are in an emergency and you have a person, let's say, who is a child, or you have a person who is new to the workplace. You are used to responding to a fire emergency, to a chemical leak or ammonia leak emergency. But you have a person, yes, you have inducted them just once, but during that day, there has been a problem. You have a visitor who actually is new. You have a disabled person, and you have to evacuate, and so forth. You really need to look at these things, and when you are dealing with this. Otherwise, you add a lot of stress to the vulnerable groups within your workstation. Then the use of competent workers to be managing services, emergencies, and competent emergency service providers, whom you must be always checking. You are going to bring a person when somebody is now thinking, now I'm going to get the solution. Then the emergency service provider provides a lot of more darkness into the situation. That is not required. Ladies and gentlemen, once we have an emergence or an incident of a psychosocial nature, rehabilitation is an imperative. I think we borrowed from our partner here, who is NASA, who has even a rehabilitation center in Blawa there. When you are injured by a mechanical or a physical hazard, they have a rehabilitation center. On the same token, when somebody is affected mentally, there need to be some rehabilitative measures and eventually preparing them to return to work. Examples of measures to improve rehabilitation and return to work that companies should actually have are providing access to or information about general occupational health services, confidential debriefing, counseling services, conflict mediation, engaging in affected worker to understand and plan for reasonable work adjustments. Say, in what way would you think we have learned from this incident? If you are given the opportunity to do it better, how do you want us to rearrange this? So this that becomes very, very important, especially when you are not prescribing the process of return to work, but you are actually getting what they want. And in ensuring that management roles, whom we normally see as the solution to everything or as being involved in almost everything of however nature, when you are a manager, you are basically having an oversight role and you'll be involved in quite a number of things. Some of them that you are not always experienced about, but by you being in charge of those, you are the shepherd of that sheep, or those sheep. You need to actually be competent on those issues. So managers you must invest as organization in training people to be competent in attacking, in tackling psychosocial issues or health and safety issues of a psychosocial nature. And also to understand applicable legal and other requirements associated with psychosocial risks, as well as return to work. Then there is need to regularly monitoring rehabilitation and return to work programs to establish if there are new or previously unidentified risks that we need then to evaluate. Then, ladies and gentlemen, where a person has understood their context, they set the leadership there in psychosocial risk management, they have planned, they have supported, and they have operated. At one point, you need to evaluate the performance of. At one point, you need to evaluate the performance of your psychosocial risk management system, or that facet within the broad occupational health and safety management system, just like in clause 9 of ISO 45001, the parent standard, which this one is, which is a normative reference to this one. So there are requirements to monitor, measure your performance against objectives and what you have planned, to sit down and analyze the results of monitoring and measurement, and to at the end of the day, evaluate whether you have achieved the intended outcomes. You need to provide that data on activities related to psychosocial health and safety in workplaces. You need to recognize the need for confidentiality. Confidentiality is coming from time to time. Then evaluate extent to which legal requirements are met. There are also legal requirements where you evaluate whether you are complying with the boiler regulations, with factories registration regulations, with the hazardous substance management, with excavation and work at heights, with the pressure vessels regulations. Look at also compliance with legal requirements touching on psychosocial hazards, work organization, work arrangements, social factors, equipment, and so forth, as it relates to psychosocial risks. And that must not be kept in your mind. It must be retained as appropriate documented information. So when we keep your of this, let's say psychosocial risk management audits, you are supposed to keep that. It means it becomes your conscience in future, a reference in future. And if somebody were to come and audit a management system, they will, where they are looking at whether you were monitoring dust, they will look at also your report for evaluating your compliance to psychosocial risks associated with violence, associated with the bullying, associated with the work overload, associated with job autonomy, and so forth. Other tools that can be used to evaluate are internal audits, management reviews, which are high-level reviews of a psychosocial management system or that facet in the overall management system in order to see whether the system is effective. And obviously, from a psychosocial perspective, it's implied to determine your indicators of an effective psychosocial risk management system. Much as you say in your management review meeting, there being no any other business, we declared that this occupational health and safety management system is adequate, suitable, and effective. The auditor will ask you what are the factors that you consider to lead you to that conclusion. So we are saying on the same token, this standard requires you or implies you to have telltale signs, indicators that an effective a psychosocial management system or protocol or plan that you have is effective. And an effective one is one that embraces all those recommendations that we talked about in clause 8 of managing those. Stagnation is a hazard. We say the career stagnation is a hazard, but also performance stagnation is a hazard. So this standard recognizes that improvement is an imperative of any management system. Remember, we said this is a guideline that we are taking in the overall framework of ISO 45001 of 2018, which also has improvement. So psychosocial risk management also needs to improve, but you must take into account a certain number of things as you improve and you carry out, let's say, management reviews and corrective action. You must use performance evaluation results, reports from psychosocial incidents, consultations from workers and their recommendations. You take that to improve your audits results. You take them to improve whatever you have decided or deliberated in your management reviews with the inputs and the outputs. You take that as an input into improvement. Your results of investigation of incidents of a psychosocial nature, you also use them for improvement. Even it can end up even improving even the code of conduct that we had in the toolbox meeting from our colleague here. So you need then, after learning from those, develop a corrective action that will tackle underlying causes of the psychosocial hazards and the risks that we have picked throughout the different fora, and we actually implement them religiously, just like we would be religious to other mechanical risk management protocols, chemical and biological risk management protocols. And at the end of the day, ladies and gentlemen, the standard wants us as an organization to evaluate the effectiveness of all the actions, including the improvement actions, whether where we were saying we are improving, whether we are actually improving. And when we do that, we will be attacking the North Pole of the psychosocial management pole, just like you see in that model. Ladies and gentlemen, it has been a long, but sometimes also very short interaction. What we have picked here is ISO 45003 in conclusion, is an ancillary guideline standard. For now, it is at a final draft in the national standard stage that has been approved with a 97% approval, and it is set to be released or published in June, and it will be available for everybody. But its reason is not to bring any new things or new requirements, but it is to aid the understanding and the implementation of ISO 45001 of 2018, on the same manner that the guideline to implementation of ISO 45001 of 2018, the standard ISO 5002, that is currently a committee draft stage. And this week we were actually in meetings to review that, and next week we will also be in that meeting before it goes to a final draft stage that will also be circulated. It is actually meant, ladies and gentlemen, to ensure that we have the correct interpretation, intensive interpretation and implementation of risk control measures that are not shy of meeting psychosocial risks, and that will make sure that all the facets of risk management, occupational health and safety risks, are managed. So it is there to complement ISO 45001, where psychosocial risk management are implied in clause 6.1.2. But we would want now to ensure that where we were doing it partially, inadequately, we try and expand horizons. Everybody looks at how we can improve managing fumes at the workplace. Everybody is actually scratching their head. How can we improve hearing conservation programs to prevent hearing impairment? Everybody looks at how can we manage chemical safety. And you have a lot of literature in that. Now this standard has come as a guideline, and it's a must for those people who are implementing these management systems, and those even who can just want to improve their settings, really to look at those requirements, where you must understand your context first, take leadership and workers' participation, then you plan very, very well, identify hazards in their categories, assess the risks, come up with control measures in their categories, primary, tertiary, and secondary. And you evaluate your performance at the end of the day. And in all that you do, make sure that workers are at the center stage, being consulted and actually participating in decision making. And let us make sure that we also observe the principle of confidentiality. And at the end of the day, where there's a problem, let us manage it and rehabilitate the workers, put mechanisms for doing that, report incidents and learn, and we continually improve. With ISO 45003, ladies and gentlemen, it is clear that you will be entering new horizons when it comes to occupational health and safety management. And you can only say to yourself, I'm now entering an almost free zone. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your audience.
Thank you very much, Dr. Nyenda. Heads off, ladies and gentlemen, for a wonderful presentation. Indeed, I've entered a new horizon. Just to allude to what you were saying in terms of rehabilitation, I myself am a survivor from an electrical accident. I have been to the NASA Rehabilitation Center in Blawayo, and I've brought back skills and devices that actually help me to function better in the workplace. My history is from an electrical accident, but I'm now an IT professional. I function better because I passed through the rehabilitation center. A takeaway point for me was that the psychosocial risks do not have a smell. I once worked at a mine in Chinoi. Yes, cyanide does smell like rotten eggs, but we can't smell psychosocial risks. They do exist everywhere, and we may mistakenly take them as the norm. Just to ask you, Doctor, our good friend Koketso said that maybe you could highlight or expand on the importance of home and work balance. Maybe Koketso, if you are still with us, you could probably ask, enlighten us on your question so that the doctor may respond before we then move on to the discussion. And just before you come through, if you are looking at this at the screen there, that's the highlight of our next session. That's going to be on the 4th of June. Please don't miss out. Let's invite our management. Let's come and discuss issues that matter. Safety is paramount. Let's enter new horizons, like what the doctor has been saying. The art of executing safe shutdowns. That's gonna be the hot topic on the 4th of June. We thank our partners, Tel One NASA and Fanira Safety. And probably, Kokeso, can you come through with your contribution or a question so that the doctor can attend to it?
Okay, thank you, Chair. Yeah, indeed, my question to Doctor is simply looking into the importance of workers understanding how home-work balance can really brings positive aspects into their daily routine activities at work. How would one who doesn't know what homework balance is, and then what are the benefits of such homework balance? That is the explanation that I want. Perhaps maybe a doctor can explain to me, so that also I can share with my coworker here at work, so that we can maybe turn around the situation, so that we can help those that are in need of information such the ones that the doctor is sharing with us. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, colleague, for that question. Home and work balance, or work and home balance. We know we go to work because of home pressures. When I say home, I'm not saying negative pressures, but they are needs. We have our family's home that needs, whose livelihoods come from what we do at work. So the work provides the economic means of satisfying the social needs that are there. So you need to have ample time to be working at the workplace. So it is illegal for one really to be using their money that they've worked actually to fund their health and safety at the workplace. But they will actually take
I guess the doctor is having some challenge there. Do we have any other questions that we may want the doctor to address?
Yeah, I'm now using the host's computer. Mine has also lost signal here. So I was saying we go to work so that we satisfy this. Okay, I'm now back. Saying we go to work so that we meet our social needs home. We need shelter. We need food at home. We need to educate our children and other needs that we really need home. So we need to make sure that we work so that we are able to provide that. But to then stay at work because we get money that is supposed actually to be sent home, I think it will be an oversight. We also need to create time for the person to actually also recover from the monotony of the work that they were doing. Remember, the standard said doing something repeatedly or for prolonged periods is stressful. So if you allow them to move out of that boiler house, to move out of that dump truck and get home in a different environment, it's refreshing. It removes even that stress. It also even rejuvenates them so that tomorrow they won't come one fatigued, they will also come actually fresh, and the benefits will actually be felt by the organization. When you do not support home balances, homework balance, let's say you are always wanting the worker to be under pressure with a lot of workloads and you don't care about whether they really need to be given time, for example, to go, they work remotely to go and see their families frequently. I think in the Tuesday meeting that we had, our colleague here talked about the family also sometimes coming home, coming to the workplace to actually bully or to be violent to the worker. It's embarrassing, but at the same time, those social risks that are actually the problems that are manifesting home, they can actually come back and be vented at the workplace. I was working at a certain mine when you would see people coming from the compound or the village trying to look at looking at their husbands to say, are these guys still at the workplace? They are not coming at the workplace. Probably they were saying it is because they are still at the workplace, and sometimes they would use it as an excuse. So whatever problems that we get home, sometimes they can follow us. Imagine you are now having a problem with your wife at the workplace, at home, and you are at a workplace. The problems that you are having, you always quarreling about your unavailability home. Whatever your wife will be doing, for example, finding a helper who will assist you. Yes, if you think you are a social artisan, your partner can get you a sufficing assistant, an adequate assistant. Then that imagination that you are living in a compound where you are at the workplace, but you cannot go home, you are overloaded at the workplace, and you can note that there are certain problems that are now creeping into your family, and you won't recover from that. You always having it in your mind, but you'll be at the work because you do not have the position really to actually reverse that situation. Once you've done that, obviously you're not going to be alert at the workplace. When you're not alert at the workplace, your mind is home, your mind is at the workplace. You are likely to have some errors, which is a problem to quality production, to service production. You are also likely to have poor recognition of hazards, and you can actually get injured. And the problems that you had, I think you had the signs and symptoms of psychosocial risks. Some of them are even bullying. You find the worker now, instead of now what the problem that they're having home because they're failing to balance those things, they will come and vent them at the workplace. Remember, the workplace sometimes is the recipient of the social, is actually a social exhaust of what happens at home. And you must also remember that on the same token, the home is also a social exhaust or a recipient of the exhaust from the workplace. So whatever problems that that emanate at the workplace, you can actually vent them, your anger, whatever problem that you're having with your bosses, your failure to be remunerated well, you can then mistake it lack of understanding on the part of your wife, on the part of your children, who are just looking at their rights of being protected and being supported by yourself. When your wife, your children, the community that you are is also giving you a problem, wanting you to be accountable for failure to be available, for failure really to be doing what other men do who are available, who do not have high job demands at their workplaces. You feel like you want now to go and vent the anger to the subordinate, to the co-worker, and to the rest. The ultimate impact is not only social at the workplace, it is economic. The work-home balance, you can have economic impacts, you can have production impacts, you can have the social impacts, health and safety impacts. And the same applies home as well. I think in a shell of a big nut, that is my take.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kokeso, my friend. You've been answered.
Yes. Thanks to you, Chair, and thanks to the doctor. I'm definitely answered. Thank you so much, team.
Thank you very much for joining us. We definitely hope that we'll be together in the next session. And as I check the charts, Dennis is saying that, are there any legislation that can protect the worker from work overload? Doctor, maybe you could say something on that.
Yeah, I don't want, while this one is a purely legal issue, but that is related to this one, yes, there is legislation that protects workers. I think the Labor Act itself, it talks about men working hours or hours to be worked by a worker, which prescribes 8 of them. then the rest, they be overtime upon agreement, which then you must also remunerate. And sometimes that prescribes even hours that you can't go beyond. When you go to the mines as well, mining legislation, it will tell you that an operator of a machine, yes, they can operate it for certain hours, but they cannot go beyond certain consecutive hours, let's say 16 hours or 12 hours in the mining regulations. So yes, if you look for them directly and indirectly, remember legislation is interpreted in two ways. In terms of the letter of the text of instruction in the legal instrument, and also in terms of the spirit. So even if you don't get it, that says the workload must be like this. They allow you to have a collective bargaining where they are represented, the workers are represented, and they will actually be negotiating with you in terms of conditions of work. And where the legislation requires that protocol of collective bargaining or of bargaining work conditions, and it means such factors are covered there. They are expected to be discussed, and you have yours for your NEC or whatever. You then agree on that. It may spell out how overload can be prevented or can be managed, how long working hours can be actually be managed. So directly, I've said the Labor Act stipulates some hours. Mining regulations, they stipulate also certain hours. But indirectly, the labor laws require people to have collective bargaining and agreements pertaining conditions of work. Even the constitution of administrative protocols, such as works councils that are mandatory, such as OH committee by the employer, and that they are functional. They are also a means of protecting work from that overload. Not directly, but you expect an overloaded work to the outcomes or crises that to read the minutes of the cycle of the works council meetings of the OHS committees, so that you check whether those things are actually being discussed and whether action plans are coming out of that, and whether people are walking the talk when they pledge in a works council meeting or OHS committee meeting. That is required.
Yeah, I think there's a bit of a network glitch there, but very enlightening.
I've given off the direct ones, but I'm saying still the law is also in the spirit. Say there is no direct law that protects us from overload. Yet the law says the employer must do everything to prevent changes that can come. Someone who is actually checking on you, let's say it's before a court of law, person will tell you how to empower the worker to refuse to work. And if you think working beyond certain hours is harmful, you can refuse to work, actually refuse to do that. There has to be a paradigm shift where workers do not utilize.
Yes, I can notice that the doctor is having some challenges, and we thank him for the time and in enlightening discussion. I have indeed entered a new horizon in terms of psychosocial risks, the solutions, how we can go about this. And a big takeaway point for me is that management should be involved, workers' committees, workers' councils. The worker himself or herself needs to be involved. This just shows us that it's our common responsibility within the organization to maintain maximum safety at all times. It is not the responsibility of the supervisor alone or of the worker to safeguard their own life. So we are going to leave the meeting open so that we can interact with the doctor amongst ourselves. The discussion has been very exciting and very enlightening, but time is not on our side. We have from the budgeted time we've gone a little bit a step further. Like what the doctor highlighted, that it's a very long discussion, a very short one in the same manner. It depends on how you are looking at it. The discussion does not end here. Safety is is of paramount importance. Let's post our email addresses so that we can get invites to future discussions. We can also check our social media handles from Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, as well as the Fanira website. Thank you very much for attending. The meeting is going to be open, let's say until 1:15. Let's mix, let's mingle, let's share what we experience in our workplaces, comments, additions, and any corrections are welcome. Please feel free to say something as we interact both on the voice and video platform. Let me just check our host if they are around so that we can all turn on our videos for a group picture. Host, are you around? Are you ready to get us a group picture? Maybe someone can share their story while we wait for the host to confirm their ability to take our group picture. Thank you, Roy. Thank you, Vimbai. Thank you, Douglas. Thank you, Inos. Thank you, Koketso. Koketso, I would love to see you next time, please. We want to hear stories from your workplace and changes as well. Thank you, Kudakwashe. Thank you, Miriam. Thank you, Patrice. Thank you, Pemo, and Proceed. Thank you very much for attending. Thank you, Roy and Shikita, Tafadzwa, and Charlene, Miss Boka. Thank you very much for joining us in such a wonderful discussion. My name is Ranga here. I'm a survivor. Some of the things that the doctor has actually been mentioning, I've experienced the negative impacts of psychosocial factors in the workplace. This is reality. This is not, this shouldn't end just on Zoom. Let's live by safety standards. Let's uphold and make sure that we save lives. One life lost is too many. And once again, I would like to thank our partners for making this a successful session. I'll just, as we interact, I'll just check our host for when we can actually get our group photo. So great news, guys. Can we turn on our videos? Our host is ready to get us a group picture. My video is on there. So if you can actually see, if you are looking at the screen, these are my hands. Accidents are actually real, guys. Let's stay safe. Let's play it safe. The hands don't grow back. I survived an accident in 2012. So this is important. And employers are not very friendly when you can no longer perform the duties that they want you to. So let's just turn on our videos. Let me just check. Inos, if you are able. Guy Lord, are you able to turn on Kudakwashe, Miriam? Yes, our host, please let us know when you are taking so that we can smile.